Hey there, and welcome back to Legend of the GLORIO Heroes, your premier recap and reaction podcast for the legendary 1988 science fiction OVA. We're here on episode 25. 25 episodes. It's been hell of a run, and I regret to inform everyone that we don't intend on stopping here. We're this.
Yep, well, we're just gonna stop at episode 72, and we're done.
Yeah, no, I'm afraid we couldn't do that, though. Let's not on such a high note. No, this show's only getting better somehow, so we just have to keep going. As always, I'm your host G, and with me, running with me like my eternal engine, the clockwork masterpiece himself, my co-host Iro.
Yep, but just still ticking.
Exactly, like clockwork, baby.
Like clockwork.
That's a Shadowrun reference for all of you.
Yes.
For all you cool kids in the know. But we got a hell of a trio of episodes this week to talk about. And as much as I would like to run right into that, we'd like to address some misunderstandings from the last podcast.
Play the corrections music.
Yes. If we had a corrections segment, that would be implying we had enough commenters for that, or that we were ever wrong enough for that. We would have a theme song playing here. But yes. So we have read some of the comments related to our last podcast, and we're just going to say here, mea culpa. We have to admit we kind of misunderstood the translation of the scene in Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Iro, if you'd like to explain.
So the narrator explains that Yang Wen-li made two miscalculations when considering the situation before retaking Iserlohn, and we assumed that somehow his not realizing the FPA would put up resistance would cause Yang's upcoming expedition to be one that had no chance of success.
Yes.
When what was being said was that if Yang had known the FPA would put up resistance, he would have, in attempting to help them, gone into a battle with no chance of success.
Yes. So we kind of misinterpreted that as that because of these two miscalculations, like that Yang's fate was sealed from here on out, when what they were actually trying to say is that had he known about Bucock's fleet, he probably would have sallied forth in an ultimately futile attempt to help Bucock.
Now, I still think him not reading the Earth Call data will come into play later.
Yes. I am adamant that will have some long-standing consequences. I think despite the seemingly ultimate destruction of the Earth Cult, I think it would be foolish to assume that their influence is out of play. But that is speculation for a different podcast, because we're here to talk about cool shit and sad shit, which can really encapsulate these three episodes in a nutshell. And I think because of just how much fun and bittersweet tragedy occurs in these three episodes, we really should just get right into it.
Yeah, covering episode 70, The Prodigal Son's Return, and episodes 71 and 72, which are The Battle of Mar-Adetta Starzone, parts 1 and 2.
Yes. So we have episode 70 kicking off with the new year. It is year 2 of the Lohengram dynasty.
The new right calendar, year 2, year 800 in the UC.
Yes, it's kind of wild because I feel like we were watching a scene of Reinhardt celebrating a New Year's party only a dozen episodes ago, but I feel like it's probably longer than that.
Wasn't that a coronation party?
The what? No. I could have sworn he definitely had a New Year's party for something else, but
that was a year that might have been a year ago in story, my dude.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yes. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember how long ago that was episode wise, but
I mean, he was crowned in June, right? So it must have been season 2.
Yeah, so just a little bit before he was coronated. But hey, it's crazy how much has happened in an in-universe year of Legend of the Galactic Heroes. You know, Reinhard promises everybody, hey, we're going to have a great New Year's party after we conquer Heinessen. Yeah. Everybody's in high spirits. Meanwhile, the FPA also, despite the different calendar, are also throwing a New Year's party.
We put up ribbons and streamers and tinsel on the flag on the bridge of the Shiva.
Yes. It's very good. Everybody is just pouring drinks. Just really pouring them out for Julian and Mashengo here. Just they got a whole fucking tray of just bottles.
Now it's not like Iserlohn's going anywhere.
Yeah. We find out that Poplan, in addition to his many skills such as ace pilot and toxin identifier, we can also throw life affairs counselor to the list of Poplan's myriad talents.
Right. It says the young people all come to him for advice.
Yes,
including Katros von Kreuzer.
Yes. Apparently, it's not even that like it would be one thing if Poplan was like just giving like unsolicited advice to Karen, but the fact that it's specifically phrased that Karen approached Poplan for advice, like it implies on some level that like in universe people like trust and respect Poplan as a like wellspring of experience, which I think is very funny. But yes, Poplan tells Julian that Karen asked him for advice on the whole Shenkop dealio,
Right. I think he says that she's not actually unhappy. She just thinks she's unhappy with the situation.
Yes.
And he told her to go talk to Shenkop and demand 15 years worth of pocket money.
Yes.
For being a missing dad.
Yes. Which is look, Poplan. Apparently, in universe, everybody thinks Poplan's got some good advice. So you know what? Who am I to judge?
Yeah. Also, want to highlight a tiny scene here where when they're pouring drinks, and even Louis Mashengo comes up and is like, "Hey, I'm going to drink too," and just starts slamming it back.
Yes.
Mashengo don't give a fuck.
He is just, he is just pounding those drinks back. I mean, look. With the whole Iserlohn thing going on, I can understand it. I feel like, by the end of this episode, we had a much different tone. But at the start of this episode, there's still a very large degree of uncertainty to the success of this operation, And
I'm just glad Mashengo has been a regular character since he was introduced.
Yes.
Because I kind of assumed at the time that he would show up like twice and then disappear.
Yeah, I mean, Mashengo doesn't get Mashengo doesn't get as many lines as I would like, but I've always appreciated his rock solid presence.
Yeah, a man cannot escape his own fate.
Indeed. So with all the celebrations taken care of, we finally go to Iserlohn, which is being...
It's time to launch the recapture operation.
Yes, and we find that Iserlohn, as we had forgotten, thankfully the show reminded us, is stationed by, or is being led... the garrison is being led by Admiral Lutz.
Yes, Cornelius Lutz has been there since like the beginning. He's in the first opening.
Lutz is one of the OGs. However, in all fairness, he is one of the less memorable OGs. I am pretty sure Lutz is explicitly one of the dudes in our season 1 finale podcast where we tried to name everybody in the opening sequence. I'm pretty sure Lutz is one of the dudes we definitively could not identify.
I could never tell Lutz and Valen apart.
Yes, I kind of...
Wallen has like a robo arm or some shit.
It was a necessity to help us remember which is which. But yes, so
now we have defining characteristics. Wallen's the guy who's lost an arm to the Earth cult, and Lutz is the guy who got bamboozled at Iserlohn.
Yes, Lutz got... Yes, we will get into that. So, Lutz is stationed at Iserlohn. He is tasked with making sure that, nobody takes this shit, because, spoilers, Iserlohn and the Iserlohn corridor, very important in this corner of the galaxy.
Yes.
We find out that Iserlohn is also pretty well defended, that there are 1 million troops stationed at Iserlohn, which basically outnumbers Yang's entire fleet by like a factor of like 10 to 20.
Yeah.
But
I'm not sure how many ships that is, but yeah.
But yes. So we find out that Lutz Iserlohn has received a missive, an encoded missive from Reinhard.
All right. Yeah. Advance send your garrison to help with the offensive.
Yes. And of course, Lutz is like, well, if Reinhard says so, we should. However, then Lutz receives a second.
He's smart. He asks if this order was encoded or if it was like not encoded.
Yes.
Because obviously, if it's not encoded, then it's a false message.
Yes, it could be from anybody. But because it's encoded, there is a reason for
order all troops to prepare to launch.
Yes. However, then he receives a second message, also from Reinhard, ordering Lutz to stay on guard at Iserlohn for there may be young
Wenli employs fraudulent tricks.
Yes, explicitly stating that Yang Wenli is known to employ devious tricks to confuse and confound the enemy.
Yeah, and you gotta watch out for Alliance and Fazani sympathizers inside Iserlohn.
Yes, so in case you haven't realized, somebody is sowing discord in the Iserlohn ranks. And Lutz orders a crackdown. They find a few cases of corruption, and Lutz feels satisfied having successfully caught Yang Wenli's trick. And
I'm glad we know to stay, because that was we almost fell for it, man.
Yes. But then Lutz receives a few more missives from Reinhard, contradicting themselves, culminating in one with Reinhard demanding why Lutz has not followed his orders to leave Iserlohn, and that he shall be punished if he does not obey this order.
Right.
And it's very...
Finally, he gets multiple orders, and a narrator tells us only the last one was actually from Reinhard.
Yes, we find out that Yang the Swindler has been up to his old tricks. He has been sending... Turns out that Yang hasn't just been sending one set of false messages. He has been sending both sets of false messages to Lutz to confuse and confound him.
You get some more. You get another shot of Bagdashu sending these messages and giving another thumbs up at the camera.
Yes. Bagdashu looks so happy fooling people. This might actually be Bagdashu's first on-screen display of effective espionage. So I'm glad it only took 70 episodes for Bagdashu to finally remind us why he is on Yang's payroll.
This is his specialty,
yes,
right?
Yes, fooling people, apparently. Which you could have fooled me on that, considering how poorly he fooled Yang all those episodes ago. But against the likes of the Empire, turns out Bagdashu's pretty good. I'm beginning to think that actually maybe Bagdashu isn't quite a traditional espionage expert, and perhaps he more specializes in cyber espionage, because every instance of Bagdashu doing successful espionage has been through computers, whether it's hacking the FPA's mainframe or the stuff he's doing here. Yes, Bagdashu would be the Decker of the party, and we are seeing and we cut to after this we cut to a scene of Reinhard, who is very angry.
How dare Lutz ignore my orders?
Yes, Reinhard is getting played unbelievably hard by Yang.
We do have Strite being like, look, it might be Yang Wenli's trickery again.
Yes, and Strite kind of has the right of it, and Reinhard thinks about it, but because of...
it's like, there's no tactical advantage for Yang Wenli to get Iserlohn.
Yes, they remain quite satisfied that, this must be some part of Yang's trick related to Bucock's fleet, because there's no way Yang could possibly take Iserlohn with his diminutive fleet, even if he did, bamboozle Lutz for a while. So let's focus on
So it's fine if Lutz stays at Iserlohn, because that way, if it is Yang trickery, Yang can't just recapture Iserlohn if the whole fleet's still inside.
Yes, it's very good. And we find out that, just a brief scene, that we find out that Bucock somehow managed to get 20,000 ships together. So, not insignificant, but also that's not a whole lot compared to the Empire's, probably 100K strong fleet.
The very first battle in the series was Reinhard's 20,000 fleet versus the FPA's 60,000 fleet.
Yes, Well, we all know how that went, but again, it takes a real genius to pull off those kind of odds.
Yeah.
But the thing I really like about this whole scene, like as much as I was like I was gleeful, I was cackling during this entire scene.
We were having a lot of fun.
It's so good because it's such this is really effective. There's bad espionage is bad lies. Okay, espionage is good lies. Great espionage is both good and bad lies, interspersed with just tiny glimmers of truth that are just plausible enough to
completely throw
someone off. And that's what happens to Lutz here. I can't really blame Lutz for what he does in this situation, because based on the information that he has available to him, Lutz is taking the logical actions here. Lutz decides that regardless of which missive is real, the point is that Yang is attempting to do something to Iserlohn, likely capture it.
Right.
So Lutz on the basic logical level, he has already figured out what Yang is trying to do, and his strategy is to kind of pull a Reinhardt at Vermilion, where he is going to pretend to follow Reinhardt's orders and leave Iserlohn and maintain just a far enough distance to encourage the FPA to try and capture Iserlohn, and then basically catch Yang's fleet in between his fleet and the Thorhammer.
Basically, make Yang's fleet think that they are leaving Iserlohn.
Yes,
when actually they're kind of just going to hang out.
It's a solid strategy. They keep saying that Lutz is
it's the most reasonable action to take. Knowing that, considering the situation, yeah.
And that's the thing. They repeatedly state in this episode and even the next episode that Lutz is a solid, fairly intelligent commander. And I think that's the thing I appreciate about this episode.
Choices.
Yeah, the thing I appreciate about this episode is Yang is not just schooling on some idiot. Schooling on some idiot would be satisfying, but what makes this really satisfying is just how thoroughly Yang Wenli outplays people who are close to his mental and strategic equal. He's not he ain't playing on easy mode. He is beating on people who are genuinely competent in their own right. And before we get into the really fun stuff, because I'm not really going to get an opportunity to talk about this, I want to talk about espionage a little bit more, Iro, if you would indulge me, because
please.
For those unaware, I studied history quite extensively in college. But however, history is a very large and general subject, and it's impossible to really study everything. So my specialties in college when I was studying history were the Civil War, modern China from 1911 to the 1980s, and perhaps my favorite, the history of espionage. And
okay, then.
So I want to talk a little bit here about why I think Yang Wenli's espionage, the espionage he is using here, is truly fantastic. And to do that, I want to illustrate with a real life example of maybe one of my favorite spies in history, Juan Pujol García, or as better known by his code name Garbo. Juan Pujol García was a Spanish anti-fascist during the 1930s and 40s, who, after his experience in the Spanish Civil War, basically hated the fuck out of fascists. And he hated them so much that when he realized through his analysis of the geopolitical situation that Germany would inevitably go to war with Britain and France, decided that he wanted to become a spy for the British. So he applied, and the British refused him. So Juan Pujol García did the next best thing. He applied to be a spy for the Germans. So the Germans, the Nazi Germany was famous for many things. Their unbridled cruelty, and their many ill-timed and ill-thought technological innovations. But one thing that may be less famous for is how awful their espionage corps was compared to the Allies. In fact, many historians would in fact argue that while Nazi Germany lost for many reasons, perhaps one of the greatest reasons they lost the war was because they were so bad at espionage and counterintelligence. And Juan Pujol García was the linchpin of this. Upon being accepted and employed as a spy for Nazi Germany, he began to set up an extremely elaborate ring, an extremely elaborate false espionage ring of fictional individuals who he claimed to the Germans were part of his extremely extensive spy network installed all throughout Western Europe.
Look, guys, I got connections.
Juan Pujol García was but one man. He convinced the Germans that he commanded a network of dozens of spies all throughout Britain. You know, ranging from Agent Moonbeam to a field agent known simply as the Welsh Fascist. All of these were made up. All of these were a fiction. All a fiction. So Juan Pujol García was not even living in Britain at the time. He was still in Spain,
all right,
using British train schedules and almanacs to craft this fictional landscape of Britain that he had convinced the Germans was the result of his extremely dedicated and competent spy network. So effective at bamboozling the Germans at this, that eventually even Britain's own domestic counter-espionage group, MI5, eventually started, quote-unquote, catching members of this spy ring, eventually culminating in confronting Garcia himself, to which finally Garcia once again offered his services to the British. This time, they accepted. The grand culmination of Garcia's efforts as Agent Garbo was finally with the D-Day landings, in fact. Operation Overlord.
Was this where the, because they had a bunch of, fake D-Days, right?
Yes.
At various locations?
Yes, Garbo was, in fact, one of the major individuals responsible for this operation. Because he had spent all this time ingratiating himself to the German spy network, they truly believed him. He was considered one of their most trusted agents. And how this all ties to Legend of the Galactic Heroes is because Garcia understood what truly good espionage is. Because every time Garcia reported information to the Germans, mostly trash knowledge, the thing that he always did was include just enough useful snippets of legitimate information that only somebody deep in the ranks of the British High Command could ever know. The information he had would have he would give snippets of information that were extremely knowledgeable. You could not deny, oh, this is really useful. But he would always release them in ways that they were either too late to be useful to be acted upon, or interspersed with enough falsitudes that verifying all of the information at the same time, by the time they had verified the actual true piece of information, it would be too late to do anything with it, because there was so much other trash information, basically, just chaff. And this culminated in the D-Day landings, where Garbo sent information, because the whole point of Operation Overlord was to convince the Germans that the D-Day landings would occur at a location known as the Straits of Dover, rather than the beaches of Normandy. Mm-hmm. And here's where Garbo approaches the brilliance of one of the greatest spies who ever lived. Once Operation D-Day was in effect, once the British had started setting off in their ships, as in there was no way to reverse course, he sent the information to the Germans that he said, "Oh shit! Actually, I just realized at the last second the landings are going to happen at Normandy Beach." But they were timed in such a way that by the time the Germans actually got the message, the Allies would already be on the beach.
Right, but it makes him look more trusted.
Yes.
Because he gave them, demonstrably true information.
Yes, he gave them demonstrably true information that was just, quote-unquote, tragically just hours too late. You know, it's brilliant. It's truly brilliant. And here's the thing: we're like, here's a funny like little anecdote within this anecdote that makes it even more interesting. Originally, Garbo was only going to tell them the landings were going to happen at Normandy Beach. But when we relayed the message to his German operator, the operator was out at the time and did not receive the message. So Garbo, seizing upon this, realizing that not only was like the original plan was all ready to send the information too late, but because the German operator on the other end had apparently stepped out for a smoke or something, was not even there, he added more to the story. He included detailed plans of the Allies' formations at Normandy, because now
he buttered up even more
because he realized, oh, they're already too late. Now, whenever this fucker gets back, they're going to be extra too late. So I might as well just like grease the information a little bit more. And for his efforts, Juan Pujol García is the only known case in World War II of an individual receiving Medals of Valor from both sides of the war. And yes, Garbo's story is fascinating. It is and I apologize. I went a little bit longer here than usual. I'm very passionate about Garbo's story. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite things, favorite stories from history. Period. And I love that Legend of the Galactic Heroes finally gave me a chance to talk about it, because like this is why Yang is an especially good like tactician, or I don't even want to necessarily call him a spy, but like why he has such a good like handle of espionage. Like it would be one thing if he gave one set of false information to Lutz, but not only did he give two sets of false information, he also gave true information to Lutz, and like that is the hallmark of a truly legendary spy. And I just want to get that all out here now, because the rest of this episode is just fucking gratuitous violence. So to get here,
Lutz launches the Garrison fleet to lure in the Yang fleet, and he sees them coming in. He's like, haha, got him. Shoot the Thor hammer. But turns out Yang's present is still there at Iserlohn, and it was a backdoor into the computers.
And so the Thor hammer has been disabled from within.
All of their gun platforms are not responding. None of their automated defenses are working. Like everything's locked out. So now we have a few hours to capture the control rooms before the Lutz fleet returns.
And this boarding fleet is, you know, as you might guess, led by none other than Schenkop and the Rosenritter. But interestingly enough, we got some new faces along for the ride. Julian, Mashengo, and even Poplan are all there, decked out in power armor and axes ready to go. I like that they have color-coded armor, just them, so that like we can tell them apart in the fights.
And so they crash the ship straight into like a hangar.
And they just start pouring out and just, you know,
cutting up fools.
There's not much to describe here. Just every time, you know, just think of every other time the Rosenritter have ever massacred a fucking pile of Empire troops. Well, it's the same thing here, except with some great little extras.
Poplan's like, man, like even since Earth, I've had to start fighting on the ground. This sucks.
We find out we can add moderately capable CQC combatant to Poplan's list of talents here. Poplan acquits himself pretty well.
Not as good as Julian or Schenkop or Mashengo.
But he can throw down. He can throw. He might not be able to throw a pillar like Lutz.
Mashengo just hurls a stone pillar down a hallway, takes out like 5 guys.
It's so good. Just like you know, like we love Legend of the Galactic Heroes for many reasons. You know, some of those reasons are its very frank, like, analysis and discussions of politics and power structures. We love Legend of the Galactic Heroes because of its compelling characters and their very, like, nuanced and grounded motivations and ideologies. But also, sometimes we love Legend of the Galactic Heroes because you can have a man like Louis Mashengo just in the middle of this like melee fight between dudes in power armor with crossbows, and axes. And then here's just Louis Mashengo picking up a stone pillar, a broken stone pillar, by the way. So the implication is either that this stone, like they don't show, either the stone pillar is a piece of rubble that like fell off during the fighting, or my preferred like interpretation, Louis Mashengo is so powerful that he ripped a stone pillar from its foundation and tossed it like a fucking tomahawk at these poor Empire soldiers. And
right,
you know, it's just the battle just falls apart from there. Like
right. Yeah, you can see we get a good scene of their morale instantly wavering once they hear that's the Rosenritter.
Yes. So Poplan almost gets got right after this scene,
right?
But gets saved by Shenkop, who Shenkop being Shenkop is like, you know, tut, you know, you're not quite there yet, Poplan, and and then of course like dying dude sees the fucking Rosenritter emblem on their armor and like.
Oh god, no.
Everybody instantly knows they're fucked. Let me remind you, this garrison is supposed to be 1 million strong. I don't know. That's not all.
I mean, a lot of guys,
yeah, but just so good.
And so they make it to a control room.
Yes. So
put in the second half of the override.
Yes.
And fire the Thor hammer at the Lutz fleet.
Yes. So not only have they disabled the Thor hammer, they have turned it to their own uses. And without even needing to take the control room, we should mention, they take like some random like fucking server farm 4 or something.
A side room.
Yeah, which I just want to mention. I don't think I nailed it exactly, but I'm pretty sure I'm the person in the season 2 finale podcast who suspected that Yang's present might be some kind of like computer virus.
Yeah,
I didn't think it would be straight up just like a backdoor, like, you know, whatever, but like. You know, I like that. That is what it ended up being, because I think we all initially assumed, oh, is it going to be like a bomb or something? But like, please, you think Yang Wen-li is that basic? But
well, yeah, and so they take control of Iserlohn.
Yes. We should mention that Lutz's fleet is decimated, but Lutz himself does manage to escape.
Yeah.
And they mention, however, that the final taking Iserlohn would take another like 24 hours.
To wipe up,
to wipe up the remnants. I do like that they brought this up, because like it leads a little bit more credence to the plan, because like I like this idea that like even if everything
on a very strict time limit,
right? Like even if everything had gone right, like even as good as the Rosenritter are, there's no way they would have captured the control room within 5 hours. Like they don't get to the control room until like a full 24 hours after the operation has started. Like. What this whole operation was to capture like just that like server room, which like kind of plays well into this whole idea of like this plan, like depending on the level of your understanding of this plan, like I think there's a lot of like plausible reasons why Lutz wasn't really sweating until a Thor hammer was activated, right? Because like I think there's a stage for Lutz where even after even after the Rosenritter have managed to like land on Iserlohn, there's probably still a part of Lutz is like, well, okay, it's not the end of the world. We'll still get back there. We're
that was the original plan. That was his original plan, was to lure them in and then overwhelm them with his numbers.
Yes, yeah. Well, the original plan was to get him with the Thor hammer. And then when the Thor hammer didn't work, it's like, well, I still got the numbers advantage. Like, there's no way they can take the control room that quickly. So it's like, I like that, like, there are multiple levels to this plan beyond just, like, the initial bamboozle. Like this is like some like triple layered bamboozling, like on an unprecedented level for this show.
Yeah, but, and so they take Iserlohn, negotiate to like allow the remnants to leave, and Iserlohn's back in our hands.
Yes,
back in the FPA control,
and under
Yang control, yes, rather.
In under a year. Yang's fleet has once again taken back Iserlohn. It's good to be home. You know, it's
indeed.
I like
Prodigal Son's return.
Yeah, I like this episode a lot, just because like I feel like it's been a while since we've had a big Yang win. Like as much as I loved all the shenanigans on Heinesen, like a lot of that felt like, Yang on like the back step, a lot of Yang in a corner, which, look, I love Yang in a corner, at least to some great moments. But like,
Yeah.
I think it's moments like these that I truly live for, when it's like when Yang Wenli goes on the active, like when he becomes an active participant in a conflict, because that is when you get your most interesting plans, your most interesting, your most interesting moments. And again, like, I love this show for how smart it is, but I'm also glad this show also knows how to just like cut loose every now and then.
Have some axe murder.
Yes, just some
pillar throwing.
Some extremely gratuitous axe murder. But with all that fun in games, we now must move on to episode 71, part 1 of the Battle of the Mar-Adetta star system.
Yep. So Reinhardt's getting ready for battle, and communications are blocked with Iserlohn and the Black Lancers. And we have intelligence that Bucock has a fleet of about 20,000. And so all of the admirals are like, yes, let us fight.
Yes, I would like to say that it's mostly the younger guys like Grillpalzer and Napstein who are like, yeah, let's just kill this old man. We got this. And I do like that it's guys like Mittermeyer and Reuenthal who are like, no, like, A, we have the numbers, we have the B, we have the time. C, like, don't fucking underestimate a guy like Bucock. Any military man who can live long enough to get that old is like has either been coasting behind the scenes his whole life, or in case like Bucock, is a legitimate motherfucker to contend with.
Right.
So
yeah, and so they find out that the Line's forces are collecting at the Mar-Adetta Starzone.
Yes.
Where which is basically a bunch of asteroids around an unstable star.
Yes.
That's shooting solar wind all over the place.
It's basically making it almost impossible to like reliably navigate in. Like the only ways to navigate it are like a few like select like corridors of space that are slightly more open. So like, again, like Lutz, props to Bucock. I think that, there's a lot can be said about, the situation itself that Bucock is in, but he is making the best of his available resources. He has set himself up well here. This is a good place for him to have a fight, and I think Reinhardt acknowledges this. I think this is another part here where once again Hilda is kind of like, we don't have to fight Bucock. Like, we could just, we could just capture Heinesen again. This is the only force the FPA has left. Like, it's hard to do much even with one army, but Reinhardt is basically like, nah,
but it's a direct challenge. It would be discourteous.
Yes, it would be discourteous
not go to battle myself.
Yes, so in the name of honor, Reinhardt is taking the fight. He assigns his admirals. We have Mittermeyer, Eisenach, Mueller, Fahrenheit, Napstein, and Grillpalzer have been assigned to this battle. Reuenthal is apparently staying by Reinhardt's side for this one.
Yeah.
We get this great scene before the battle where Reuenthal and Mittermeyer are, drinking and chatting like the dumbasses they are.
I do like these two.
I love them. I love them so much because they're just so fucking how extra they are. Reuenthal is waxing poetic here like his life depends on it.
With an old lion and a young lion desire battle.
Yes, he says that, history always wants blood. Like, but how much blood until it's satisfied? And Mittermeyer actually gets a little bit angry at Reuenthal. He's like, hey, don't talk like that. And Reuenthal's like, sorry, I guess I'm not cut out to be a philosopher. And it's just like...
That's better for Mecklinger than me.
Yeah, they're just so extra. Yes, there's that line, they're like, not like Mecklinger, that nerd. It's so extra. I love it. Their conversation I do like because it speaks to this idea of like both sides are kind of like, is it just human nature that we are kind of enthralled by the idea of like this one big definitive battle? Like, there's something poetic, there's something narrative about it, you know? Like, the idea of, like, oh, let's just have one big battle that will, like, speak to, like, the finality of this conflict. And I kind of like this because, like, on one hand, Hilda is correct that, like, we don't technically have to, like, beat Bucock to win this war. I do like that they speak to this idea that actually there are some valid strategic reasons for why Reinhard wants to do it this way. Like, they don't explicitly state it here, so I'm kind of projecting here based on my own kind of knowledge of, like, politics and warfare, but, like, beating Bucock is a definitive statement. Like, Bucock is the old lion, the final bastion of the FPA. Like, if you take Heinessen without beating Bucock, like, there will always be this, like, lingering sentiment of, like,
asterisk.
Yeah, you won, but you didn't really win. And, like, that will, like, and as silly as a sentiment as that seems, that is actually a great way to breed, like, resentment and revolutionary thoughts in a populace. Like, what better way to convince the civilian populace to, like, rebel than, like, yeah, what? He didn't even beat Bucock. Like, we're still in the fight. But by beating Bucock definitively, by destroying his fleet, by definitively destroying the last fleet of the FPA, he can truly, like, brand into the FPA's, like, cultural mindset that we have been definitively broken. So,
yeah,
you know, as much as I do kind of agree with Hilda here that the rational choice is to, like, just, you know, literally go around them, like, there are good reasons to have these kind of fights. And,
yeah, we get a quick bit of Bucock saying, perhaps he was actually fortunate because in his life he got to see the two incomparably distinguished strategists, Reinhard von Lohengrin and Yang Wenli.
Yes, but did not have to live to witness their eventual fall from grace. You know,
and will not have to live long enough to see the total fall of the FPA.
Yes, we have Chung. Well, that's Chung's editorialization of him saying, you know, yes. Also, we'll die before we witness the true, definitive, and final extinction of the Free Planets Alliance, which really just kind of lays it out there for you that, like, this has been a long time coming. We have seen this. Like, we have arguably we have seen this coming since Armlitzer, but this is it for the FPA. And so the battle begins. It begins with the less experienced admirals Knapstein and Grillpauser kind of tasked with the first push into Bucock's fleet.
Yeah, Reinhard is literally like, this is probably a trap, but Reuenthal says, yes, but basically send in the young blood.
Yes.
So we can get an idea of the enemy.
Yes. I mean, it's callous, but look, this is an entirely legitimate strategy. Like, you have to probe your enemy to see what they're capable of, and frankly, you're going to do that with people who are slightly more expendable. So, Knapstein and Grillpauser push in, kind of Bucock basically, you know, hard to do this without visuals, but basically he retreats into the corridor, one of the, like, open corridors of the Mar-Adetta system to kind of funnel them into a bottleneck, which is already a solid strategy. But where this truly comes into play is that Bucock has also analyzed and correctly timed, I guess, the, like, solar winds that occur in the Mar-Adetta system.
Right.
So he kind of braces his fleet against some of the, like, floating asteroids. Meanwhile, kind of Knapstein and Grillpauser get caught by the solar winds. Like, some of them get hit by the stray rocks, but mostly what happens is that they get clustered up together, which allows Bucock to kind of go on the offensive and just, like, you know,
shoot at the center.
Yeah, just kind of pound the shit out of them for a bit. They're kind of forced to retreat. Grillpauser is pulled off after taking, like, 30% casualties, which, again, against Bucock's 20k fleet, that's pretty damn good. You know, that's a solid hit, and, you know, kind of a solid bloodying of the nose enough to remind everybody, especially these young bucks, who are like, let's just kill this old man. That, like, this old man has a lot of fight left in him.
Yeah, there's a quick scene here of Mittermeyer watching from afar with his staff, and basically saying that even if we gave them a chance, they wouldn't. The FPA that old man wouldn't bend the knee.
Yeah.
And one of his staff members is like, Anybody who does that wouldn't be worthy of our respect anyway. And Mittermeyer is like, no, I get where you're coming from, but don't say that. Several of the admirals have done so.
Yes,
and do not denounce them.
And I just love this. Yeah, I love this aside. It's like, oh, Mittermeyer, you're so thoughtful. You are so mindful of others.
This quick scene that shows that Mittermeyer is still a nice guy.
Yeah, he's so mindful about his words. What a good boy. But yeah, so Reinhardt switches out Grillpulser for Fahrenheit. He tasks Fahrenheit
Eisenach also.
And Eisenach, yes. He tasks Fahrenheit with kind of going the long way around to go to the rear of the corridor to kind of catch Bucock in a pincer attack. He sends Eisenach to go the extra long way around to shore up another rear flank.
And then, but Bucock has some dudes in the back also to prevent this.
Well, yes. Well, we don't know about that yet. Actually, we don't know about Carlsen's fleet quite yet. But once again, sends Knapstein in on the offensive to kind of like push into Bucock, hopefully to eventually push Bucock into Fahrenheit. But Bucock has anticipated this and has set up a minefield in the corridor, slowing down Knapstein, forcing him to slowly advance through the corridor.
Yeah, cannot just charge straight in.
Yes. And as a result, when Fahrenheit does show up, Bucock is ready for it. Bucock basically anticipated that Fahrenheit would anticipate him. And this is where Carlsen's fleet's shown up in their flagship, the Diomedes.
Yes, Ralph Carlsen and his flagship, the Diomedes.
Yes.
I have put together some notes here about why Diomedes is the secret best Greek hero.
Yes, Iro, I will let you have the floor on this.
That nobody talks about. He's a major character in the Iliad. Diomedes is the best.
Yes,
it's like my favorite.
Yes, I mean, do tell me, regale me. Like, why is Diomedes the best?
All right, well, let's see here. So Diomedes, a lot of the people who show up at the Trojan War were like already major.
Yeah, some of those famous guys like Odysseus and what's his fucking name? Aeneas? No. Sure,
Aeneas is Trojan is on the Troy side.
Yeah, Achilles, my bad.
What was getting at is Diomedes prior to, lost epics taking place before the Trojan War.
Yes, in the Trojan War expanded universe.
In the Theban cycle. Actually, this is more like in Oedipus 3.
Yes, please elaborate.
He was part of the Epigoni, who are basically... So the Oedipus stuff involves a lot of the city of Thebes, and Oedipus's sons ruled Thebes for a while, and they killed the seven against Thebes.
That's the dude who had sex with his mom.
Yeah, and so his messed up kids, I guess. And so the children of the seven against Thebes were called the Epigoni, and they went to war to reclaim the rightful rule of Thebes. And Diomedes is one of those guys. That epic no longer exists. There's lost to time. But anyway, he also wanted to bang Helen of Troy, like a lot of them did, which led to the whole pact of, well, if anything happens to Menelaus's stuff, we'll all go to his defense, which caused the Trojan War.
Yes,
look,
we can't all have these kind of lofty-minded goals of conquering the Sea of Stars or defending democracy. Sometimes you go to war for much baser reasons.
Indeed. And so Diomedes sailed off to the Trojan War. He sent the third highest number of ships out of all of them. First, the most highest was Agamemnon, who was like the commander-in-chief of the entire offensive. So, of course, he'd have the most. Second highest was Nestor, who was like the weird old war vet, one that used to be on the Argo, one of the Argonauts. Nestor's main role in the entire Iliad is like people come to him for advice, and he gives them advice, but only after talking for like 2 hours about his cool adventures.
That's pretty good.
Well, you see, when I was young, this is what I did in this situation, so this is what you should do.
Yes, that's great.
But yeah, due to Diomedes' off-screen adventures, he had the most raw battle experience of any of the Greek kings sent to the Trojan War, and he was also the youngest. He was the second strongest warrior after Achilles, and he was the only other warrior besides Achilles who had armor forged by Hephaestus himself, god of the forge. Also, he had a shield blessed by Athena that could throw fire.
Well, shit, alright, that's...
Just had a flamethrower shield.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's pretty useful.
But yeah, he's like basically the only... He's like the coolest head of all the Greeks. He never gets pissy. He's just always like Agamemnon insults him once, saying like, "Oh, you're not being brave enough," or whatever. And people are like, "Man, Diomedes, you're just gonna take that?" And he's like, no, it's Agamemnon's job to rile up his troops. And, you know, a baser man would perhaps get mad at such jibes, but he's just doing his job.
Yeah, that Diomedes guy sounds all right. You know, I think
allowing his commander to save face while also protecting his own honor.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think what you're getting at here is that Diomedes was a cool dude, not just because like he got a billion kills and a cool shield, but he was also a cool dude because he was a genuinely cool guy.
Let me talk to you about some of those martial exploits.
Yeah,
on the battlefield.
Please do.
There's a particularly notable incident where he meets Aeneas on the battlefield.
Yes.
Aeneas, who was written about later by Virgil in the Aeneid, which is about how Aeneas, after the Trojan War, went on to do a bunch of stuff and found Rome, or, you know, begat, or...
what eventually becomes Rome.
Sired the people who would found Rome. Yes. And so Diomedes beats the shit out of Aeneas on the battlefield, and Aeneas is like, "Mom, come help me out." And his mother is Aphrodite. So she comes down to the battlefield, and Diomedes, who has been assured by Athena to not fear any mortal, cuts up Aphrodite. So Aphrodite is like, "Man, screw this guy." She runs back to Olympus and is like, "Hey, Ares, go beat up this dude who cut me." So Ares goes down to the battlefield. Diomedes fucking throws a spear, gets Ares.
The god of war.
Ares ain't shit. Yeah. And Ares is like, goes back to Olympus. Is like, "Zeus, come on." And Zeus is like, "Quit being such a fucking baby."
Oh, man.
So Diomedes is the only mortal who ever wounded 2 Olympians in a single day.
That's really good. That's very good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that Legend of the Galactic Heroes finally gave you your opportunity to kind of share, you know, your area of expertise, you know, mythology and the
vague expertise.
Yeah, the Trojan War expanded universe. I do love the way you talk about it, as in like, well, Diomedes was in this earlier event, but we lost the issues to that. So you got to think of this as like he's here in this crossover event called the Trojan War, but he is an established character.
You know, Diomedes will return in the Iliad.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, and I love that. Like, no, he's a cool guy, you know, not just because he kicks a lot of shit, but like he's a decent dude as well, which I feel like is kind of a rare quality in Greek myth. I am not as versed in Greek myth, but my understanding is that most of the dudes in Greek myth, I mean, you know, look, morality is a subjective thing. It changes from era to era. Look, as a fan of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, let me tell you about ancient morality. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's always kind of fun to find those characters that are like kind of relatable even all these years later, you know, kind of upholding like, you know, what we would consider objective moral goods, even if they're not actually, you know, truly objective. You know, I think like, you know, as far as I remember, like Diomedes and Hector are basically like the only 2 kind of decent people in the Trojan War.
And Hector eats it.
Well, I mean, Hector fucking eats it in the worst way. Like,
right.
I sometimes wonder.
Diomedes and Hector on the battlefield multiple times. Diomedes wins every time.
Yeah.
And then like always told right before the killing blow, "Hey, the Iliad's supposed to be about Achilles. Chill out a little." you're being too cool.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, all right.
I don't mean to turn this into the Greek mythology podcast, but I've always struggled with Hector. Is Hector's fate supposed to be tragic, or is Hector's fate supposed to be considered? Oh yeah, that is what you would do in according to Greek masculinity and mythology. Like the right thing to do would be to fucking kill this man and humiliate his corpse in front of his loyal troops.
Right.
I
think his ultimate fate is meant to being dragged around is a dishonor.
Right. So it's supposed to construe Achilles as dishonorable, even though he is also intended to be its title character. And I guess I've always struggled with what were the original writers or whatever's intentions. But anyways,
who knows?
Point is,
Diomedes was an alright guy at the end of the Trojan War when Poseidon scattered everyone and made Odysseus have to go on his Odyssey.
Yes.
Diomedes just went home.
Yes, and so Ralph Carlsen perhaps might not live up to the legend of Diomedes, but he put a good effort in here. He charges out from literally behind a giant rock and catches Fahrenheit in a pincer formation, kind of fucks up Fahrenheit for a bit.
Because Bucock knows his back's covered by the mines, and he can pincer Fahrenheit.
And something interesting happens here, and it's kind of hard to describe verbally, but if you're listening to this, you've watched this. Carlsen's fleet, the Diomedes, pushes through Achilles... not Achilles! through Fahrenheit's fleet. And pushes through into the side flank where Mueller has been assigned to. Because Mueller has been assigned to protect the flank that is protecting Reinhard.
Yeah.
Because Carlsen manages to push past Fahrenheit, he pushes into Mueller. This all of a sudden creates a very interesting, very hectic situation where all of a sudden the outcome of this battle suddenly gets a lot murky.
Right.
Because Fahrenheit, now realizing what's happened, he cannot stay and fight with Bucock. He has to chase after Carlsen. Because
Carlsen's going for Reinhard.
Yes, and to do that, he needs to push through Mueller. And so Mueller also cannot turn around to fight Fahrenheit, because if he ever stops, he loses the momentum. So now he's caught in an interesting situation where he must push through Mueller at all costs. With Fahrenheit behind him, who must also push through at all costs. And then you have Bucock behind Fahrenheit, who must also now push into Fahrenheit, or else Carlsen's fleet will be lost. All the while, Napstein is still dealing with the minefield,
right? Because they have set up even more that were on a time delay.
Yes, and
to really bog him down.
And as we find in episode 72, that Bucock is tragically unaware of, but Eisenach is also still in play. He is taking the very long road around.
Eisenach, who still refuses to speak.
Yes. And that's how episode 71 ends. And
a surprisingly chaotic battle or whatever.
Yeah, and I really like this. I really love this battle. I love the Yang Wen Li battles, but I think Bucock has actually been the leader of some of my favorite fights in this show, because it kind of shows perhaps a more grounded take on what good tactics and strategy look like.
More Yang Wen Li has always come with these crazy plots, but Bucock is a direct military commander.
Yes, Bucock is an extremely solid admiral. In any other era, in any other war in real life history, Bucock would be considered a solid, reliable admiral. The only thing you could ever hold against Bucock is that he consistently fights for the losing side. But his tactics and his strategy are extremely solid here. And not only that, but he shows good initiative here to take advantage of a situation that it's hard to tell if Bucock was banking on this. I think Bucock always knew on some level the only way to win this battle is if we can kill Reinhard.
Yeah.
But the way it happens is a little bit more spontaneous than I think a lot of admirals would like to deal with. But I think I've stated this in the past, right? Where there's an old saying that the most well-laid plans fall apart, upon first contact with the enemy. No plan. It's no plan survives first contact with the enemy, because the minute you run into your enemy, they are almost inevitably going to start doing things you don't bank on. Even if you've run 6 different calculations of what they might do one of them, but in a weird permutation you didn't quite expect. And this applies to both Bucock and the Empire fleet. We see this constant back and forth. neither side is stupid here. Yes, you have your like less experienced admirals like Grillpauser and Navstein, but like people are operating on the logic of the information they have available to them. Like, as we find in episode 72, would Bucock do something differently if he knew about Eisenach? It's hard to say, but based on the information,
he just doesn't have the numbers.
Also, that's the thing. Like, he doesn't have the numbers, right? Like, I think we'll kind of get into this more once the battle's done, and we'll kind of do our post-game commentary on the battle as a whole. But like, there's a lot about this battle that is like as much like the good tactics of its individual like combatants as it is kind of a greater statement to like the lopsided strategic situation of both sides. And despite that, though, despite those seemingly like
one second, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So strategy is like the broader scale of the war, right? And tactics is the battle level scale.
Yes. So to kind of like give a very quick summary of it, strategy is saying that if I want to capture A to win the war, I need to take B and C. Tactics is specifically the ways you take B and C, if that makes sense. Like strategy is the grander scheme of like, how do I align my resources and the people under my command to like get the maximum like potential and worth out of them as assets in this war. Tactics is like man-to-man fight, like actual fight to fight. How do I win these fights to serve the greater goal of my grander strategy?
Strategy is the macro, tactics is the micro.
Yes. So, I'll just say like really quickly here, anybody who's watched Legend of the Galactic Heroes can tell, Reinhardt has definitively won the overall strategy game, resource-wise, manpower-wise, positioning-wise. But despite all of those advantages, the reason why tactics are so important, and why to some degree sometimes, and I don't quite agree with this, but why tactics are sometimes lionized more than strategy, is because once you get down to the tactics, things get a lot murkier. Things get your
big dramatic push in is a lot sexier than I had better supply lines.
Right. I think I've said it time and time again. Logistics wins wars. And I mean, that's what we see here in the overall scheme. But yes, it is a matter of accountability. But everybody should read the manga Guns and Stamps. If you like Legend of the Galactic Heroes, I think it's a much lighter piece of material, tone wise. But I think you would have something to appreciate from the manga Guns and Stamps. But I'll just leave it at that. We have gone on way too many tangents in this podcast already. But yes, kind of to touch on it briefly, I'd rather spend most of this on our post game commentary. But
right,
Reinhardt has definitively won the strategy game. He has more men, he has more fleets, he has more time, he has more everything. The positioning, the entire positioning of this war is in his favor because he has done the work. He has laid down the groundwork, and he's not just he himself. He has laid down the foundational infrastructure to ensure that his operation runs better than the FPA's. But the reason why this battle could still be interesting is because once you actually get down to the actual fighting, things aren't always set in stone. Yes, you can have you can outnumber your opponent 10-1. You can have the right terrain, you can have the right plans, you can have the best generals, but battles are messy, battles are chaotic, and oftentimes the best generals aren't the ones who actually lay down the best plans, but are the ones who adapt the best to the information and material they have available to them. And I think it's great that episode 71 kind of ends on that tone, because even, despite the direction 72 eventually takes, I like that 71 reminds us, look, yes, of course Reinhardt has the sheer advantage here, but things are not obvious, in the outset, in the moment. Yeah. And so with that, we should probably just roll right into 72.
Right. I mean, Bucock's being hammered, but they're still pushing in to penetrate in.
Yes.
To get Reinhardt.
Yes, they're getting kind of ripped
hammered
up
from all sides.
Yes, turns out that Carlsen does manage to push through Mueller's fleet, but Eisenach's fleet has shown up and attacks Bucock's rear.
Meyer's coming in.
Yes. So basically the FPA fleet is getting hammered by all sides. They went for a very daring push, and it's beginning to become apparent that it's maybe not going to be able to hold up. We have Bucock. We see Bucock here with Chung. Turns out that even at this point in the battle, they kind of are banking on the Mar-Adetta solar winds, which seem to help a little bit because they do allow Bucock to take a conical formation and kind of also manage to push through Mueller's fleet into Reinhardt's fleet along with Carlsen. And it's a desperate charge, and eventually,
and some more ships are coming in.
Yes.
Get the freaking anime.
Yes. The
screen is cut into multiple faces of everyone going, "Gas! Oh no!"
And who is it other than our friend Bittenfield and the Black Lancers? Showing up late as Bittenfield is wont to do.
Haha! It's time to kill them all.
Right, Bittenfield's like, haha! It's time for us to claim the glory. It's like, dude, you showed up late.
I do there's a bit here of Reuenthal's no, be careful, Bucock might still have
a trick,
plan up his sleeve, but Reinhardt says nah, let him. If it wouldn't be Bittenfield if he didn't just fucking charge right in.
Right, it wouldn't be Bittenfield if he didn't act like Bittenfield. So kind of charges in, and you kind of get the tone here that
it's still final nail in the coffin.
Yes, this is the fate has been sealed for the FPA fleet. Carlsen's fleet is getting picked apart. We have a great bit here where Carlsen on the Diomedes kind of laments the times. That because of his status, because of his I guess socioeconomic status, he could never afford to attend Fleet Officer Academy. Which is really for those of you not familiar with military structure, really actually speaks to how despite how little we've seen of him, actually speaks to how talented Carlsen must actually be, because that implies that Carlsen rose to the ranks of officer from the grunts. He had to go all the way from the bottom. Guys like Yang Wenli, when you attend Officer Academy, you automatically start at a certain rank, but just kind of Carlsen lamenting that also. But on the other hand, I'm also an officer leading a fleet because all the good men are already dead. So
right.
But
and he was able to a schmuck like him was able to get this close to the Galactic Kaiser,
to get within swinging distance of Reinhard von Lohengrin.
Done all he can.
Yeah, and Carlsen's fleet eventually gets destroyed.
And Bucock's fleet is rapidly diminishing.
Yes, it's getting disintegrated. And eventually, after, I think they say they take 80% losses.
Yeah, he says permission granted to withdraw from battle should you choose.
Yes, that the battle is lost, that Bucock tried his best, but, it's just his best wasn't good enough. Maybe not just because of him, but because of just, as we spoke to earlier, just all of the things that are surrounding this battle.
So Hilda walks to Reinhardt and says, allow them to surrender.
At least give them the opportunity.
Although Reinhardt's starting to push back. He's why should I, the winner, pander to the loser?
Right. There's a very there's a little bit of bratty Reinhardt here again, where as much as Reinhardt talks lofty about, I'll give the old man an honorable battle, he gets really bratty sometimes when when exposed, and he's just why would I extend that? As much as he tries to maintain the aura of this magnanimous golden emperor,
right,
he is undeniably petty in some very real ways.
I mean, it takes Hilda is smart, and says. Allowing them that opportunity will show your magnanimity.
Yes. And so we kind of have Bucock here where a few ships also stayed behind, to the bitter end. It's and so Reinhardt eventually does, but he does it through Mittermeyer. So Mittermeyer offers Bucock surrender, blah, blah, blah. You'll be treated fairly, etc., etc. Bucock says that he demands direct communication with Reinhardt, which is granted to him. And we have a bit here where Chung starts breaking out the drinks with him and the captain of the Rio Grande.
Yep. Ralph Emerson,
yes,
I think, or Waldo Emerson,
something like that. And Bucock gives,
pretty good speech.
As much as I love Yang's speeches about the lofty ideals of what democracy is and should be, I think I've actually come to really love and appreciate Bucock's defenses of democracy. Not even in that like old man folksy way, but just like the way he delivers it, it speaks from a place of experience and like a more grounded like viewpoint of life than like Yang's very high-minded ideals. And
right,
Bucock gives a speech that like, Reinhardt, you're a great guy. You are a legendary commander. You have thoroughly beaten me. Like
I'd love to have a grandson just like you.
Yes, I have a great. Yes, that bit there. Like if I had a grandson, I wish he was like you. But I can never bend the knee. I can never be a servant because I believe I want to be friends with everybody, and I believe you can only be friends with your equals. That a master and a servant, as close as they might ever be, can never truly be friends. And so I could never be your servant and I could never be your master. Like,
that's why he must fight for democracy.
Yes. This core ideal of Bucock's like belief is why he believes democracy is truly, genuinely worth fighting and dying for. And kind of with that said, Reinhardt, yes.
Take a drink. Toast to democracy.
Yes, a toast to democracy. And
hang
then
up.
Reinhardt orders the final destruction of what remains of the FPA fleet.
We get this quick montage of Kirky Eyes.
Yes.
We haven't seen Kirky Eyes in a long time, even in flashback.
Yes, we get a little bit of Reinhardt's mental state here,
this does show, I think, that he was as at least contemplating his relationship with Kirky Eyes.
Yes.
Whether it was truly one of friends and equals or if it was a master-servant relationship.
Yes. Reinhardt gets a little indignant at Bucock's statement. He's like, how could you ever understand? Like, I mean, it's a little flimsy. Where it's like, you weren't raised in an autocratic environment. How could you ever understand the relationship between a master and servant? And it's like, well,
it's necessarily that.
Yeah.
I mean, it brings up the question, at least, whether to both in and out of context of the show, whether his relationship with Kirky Eyes was that of equals as friends, or if it was a master-servant relationship.
Right, and like I don't think any of us would ever deny that Reinhardt and Kirky Eyes were very close on a personal level, but I do like that they're at least willing to like remind us that like there will always be a tension in a master-servant relationship because there is a power dynamic, and of course, and as a result, the relationship does kind of hinge on the magnanimity, the magnanimous attitude of the one in power. Like, the one who holds the power in a relationship, if he ever decides, he can decide to stop being friends. Like, he can decide, if he decides something, the other friend/servant doesn't really have a say in the matter. I mean,
turn in your sidearm, Kirky Eyes.
Right, exactly. Turning your sidearm, telling that to Kirky Eyes, telling Kirky Eyes to stand further away from him. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say not true friends. I do think they were truly friends, but equals could not say such things. Yang could not tell Shen Cop or Dusty, stand further away from me. Like, this isn't right. Like, not that Yang would ever do that, but Yang could never even do that because, like, yes, he is their superior in terms of like leadership, but like as men, no, as humans, as individuals, as the members of a democratic nation, they are equals. And like that is an ideal worth striving for. And with that said, we Bucock and Chung kind of die with the Rio Grande here.
Yep. And Everybody salutes.
Yes. Reinhardt commands that all salute the remnants of the battle as they pass through Mar-Adetta. And, kind of, this was the last stand of the FPA. And I think in many ways, this battle really, I think it truly encapsulates, like, I think this battle in many ways is a miniature encapsulation of the story of the late FPA. I think the FPA, I think based on what we've seen in these past 72 episodes, I think the FPA was actually full of very good individuals. I think the tragedy always has been that these individuals were they were never at the levels of authority that they deserved, or at the levels of authority where they could have made, like, the necessary changes to, like, redirect the course of the FPA. And
but also their ideals demanded that they not
exactly. Like, yes, thank you for getting to that, Iro. Like, but like, yeah, like the tragedy is also like they never could have, as long as they truly believed in democracy. They also could have never gotten to that level of authority. And what does that say about democracy as a political structure? Is that an indictment, or is it just a bittersweet weakness of a form of government that, like all forms of government, can be vulnerable to corruption and self-serving individuals? Like, I think it's very easy for certain viewers of this show to very much look at Legend of the Galactic Heroes as like this black and white, like, veneration of autocracy and like this indictment of democracy as this like corrupt, limp-wristed, like, governmental structure. And I've always think that's kind of that is kind of the basic bitch take on Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I think that unironically, the real Galaxy Brain take on this show has always been like both of the governments that we see in this show are at their core made of people, and the structures of them both maybe have an effect on what those people can do. But at the end of the day, the things that truly matters to the long-term, like, success and prosperity of those governments is the people themselves. And the tragedy of the FPA is simply that in this time in history, in this era, they just had the wrong people in power. They had the circumstances were just not in the cards, and you know what? That it'll happen time and time again. And at the end of the day, in theory, a democracy can recover from that. And autocracy has a much harder time recovering from that. So, as the pages of history turn, who can really say?
Indeed.
But
what we can say is that Emil von Sekla is still attending Reinhardt.
Yes. It's all well and good. We have this scene which is great because it's like very tender, nice Reinhardt being like, "Oh, Emil von Sekla, you precocious kid, thanks for the tea. I'm nice and relaxed."
Mm-hmm.
And then the narrator says, and then 3 hours later, Reinhardt received news of Yang Wenli's treachery and the recapture of Iserlohn.
I did forget to mention earlier when they're talking about Yang Wenli, and then they're like, "Oh, even if Yang Wenli takes Fazan, we'll still be able to leave through Iserlohn. He has no recourse open to him."
Right. So they do briefly mention Reinhardt at least entertains. How do we know Yang Wenli's not on his way? Just like in the Battle of Rantbario, right? And Reinhardt's like, I'm not too worried. Yang's logical choice would be to capture Fazan behind me to cut me off, but it wouldn't matter.
Right.
So the actual news
is he took Iserlohn again, less than a year after Reuenthal captured. Reinhardt is very mad. He tosses his wine glass on the ground. What is a man?
Not pleased. Lutz returns, kind of tail between his legs. Like, I'm really sorry.
Right.
Reuenthal is pulling on his collar a little bit.
It's not Reuenthal's fault.
No, but they say that the unspoken sentiment in the room is that, well, it's kind of Reuenthal's fault that he didn't catch Yang Wenli's back door.
Right.
Like, he felt he caught the bombs and thought that was it. So
all the admirals kind of argue over whether this really affects their plans, whether they've been tricked by a joint effort. And
Binfield, well, before that, Binfield, as always, is the hype man, where he's just like, who cares? It doesn't matter. We'll just kick his ass. It's just like, Binfield, please.
Calm down, sir.
But yes, Hilda,
the smartest person in this entire show.
Hilda is becoming, I hate to say, she's becoming annoyingly smart for me. Like, because I feel like if Hilda were not here, like, the thing
we would have beaten Reinhardt a long time ago.
Yes, yeah, there's so many things Yang Wenli could have pulled off without Hilda just being like, actually, I've already figured out what Yang Wenli's going to do.
Right. Yeah. And so she basically says, this is by chance. Like, Yang didn't plan this. In fact, losing Admiral Bucock is a huge blow to Yang Wenli.
Right. Like, if Yang was actually collaborating with Bucock, they would have never, like, allowed him to die. Like, he is too valuable of a piece for Yang to throw away on just, like, recapturing Iserlohn. But despite that, at the end of the day, Yang Wenli is sitting pretty on Iserlohn, and Reinhardt is not. And
Mittermeyer says, we have no fear of traveling 100,000 light years for war, but we fear the name of Yang Wenli.
Yes, that the whole of the Galactic Empire might simply exist to be a foil for Yang Wenli.
When we add like 3 or 4 to the if Kirky Eyes were here counter.
Yes, right. Reuenthal breaking out the if Kirky Eyes were alive.
We would never have lost Iserlohn like this.
It's like, motherfucker, if Kirky Eyes were alive, this entire situation wouldn't even resemble the current one. Like,
Meyer saying, if Kirky Eyes were alive, Oberstein would never be in charge.
Yes. I'm glad that they are still remembering. Oh, by the way, we haven't heard from Oberstein in a while. That dude's up to some shady shit.
I want to see Oberstein versus Becklinger back on Odin.
And they speak to, well, one way or another, we're going to have to deal with Yang Wenli's militaristic magic. So add that to
a militaristic magician.
Yes. And with that said, Reinhardt is pretty pissed, but Hilda once again advises Reinhardt to kind of take it slow. Like, once again, Reinhardt, let me remind you, he's in Iserlohn. We don't have to fight him right now. Like, let's just go to Heinessen.
It's not really a bearing on our current goals.
Right. Like, Yang, like, in many ways, of course, Yang Wenli capturing Iserlohn is a huge blow to us, but at the same time, it has no bearing on our current trajectory. And so, with that, concludes episode 72 of Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
Oof. Shows a lot.
This was a really great trio of episodes.
Yeah,
we haven't had a lot of like battles lately, so I'm glad we're kind of getting back into it. You know, kind of really shows that like Legend of the Galactic Heroes. We say it time and time again. It's just a show that is that displays mastery in so many like myriad ways of like, and so many myriad lanes of fiction. Like the politics, the dialogue, the characters, even the action and the battles and the tactics. Like it's also just unbelievably well thought out. And even here, like where we're like laughing about like, you know, Mashengo throwing pillars at dudes, we're also kind of lamenting like, you know, Bucock's fate and the eventual like fate of the FPA. It's a show that manages to juggle so many different elements so effectively. If you'll allow me, right here at the very end, since we're kind of going to get into our post battle commentary of Mar-Adetta, you know, like people listening probably like, you know, could probably accuse me of being maybe slightly more biased towards the FPA. Sorry, guys, I just kind of inherently
like
spoiler. Like, sorry if that offends you. I just inherently believe in a liberal democracy more than you know a fascist autocracy. But I truly do think that, like, you know, for better or worse, I think Bucock acquitted himself well in this battle. Like, based on the materials he had available to him, based on the information he had available to him, he truly did the best with the resources he had. And in many ways, this battle was basically won before the battle even started. You know, all the way back to Bucock only have 20,000 ships, to the FPA fleet being annihilated in all the previous poorly timed and poorly thought out wars. You know, like, in many ways, like, this battle, like, was important, but in many ways, this battle was just a culmination of a very long death spiral for the FPA that's been occurring since season 1. And so that's why I kind of thought about, like, Bucock's final charge, and why, like, you know, I think a lot of people are like, why the fuck would you make such a, like, desperate charge when you're, like, so thoroughly outnumbered? And, you know, I think it is the fascinating thing about charges in battle. Like, why would you ever charge? Like charging as a concept in battle is an often debated thing, because, quite frankly, charges don't actually succeed most of the time, but they do succeed often enough, and often to such, like, extreme degrees that they're still considered, like, it is a high risk, high reward tactical maneuver. And when you're in a situation like Bucock's, like, high risk, high reward is the only option you can take. Kind of to tie this to something to kind of, like, explain, like, why I think charges do have their importance in battles. Like, I rely on my other expertise in history, the Civil War. And I'd like you all to go back to the 1860s. Picture yourself at Gettysburg. And the reason for this is, I mean, a lot of people talk about Pickett's charge, but the charge I'm actually going to talk about is the charge of the 20th Maine Volunteer Infantry Regiment. The 20th Maine was... oh, wait, no, I'm not thinking of the 20th Maine. My bad, I'm getting this mixed up. My bad. Ah, yes, okay, the 1st Minnesota. My bad. There were lots of charges at Gettysburg. Some of them worked, some of them, The 1st Minnesota, the 1st Minnesota Volunteer Infantry Regiment was tasked with buying time so that the rest of the Union Army could set up and position on Cemetery Ridge. For those unfamiliar with the Battle of Gettysburg, Cemetery Ridge kind of formed the central backbone of the Union formation during this battle, and was arguably one of the most important positions in the Union Army. However, the Confederates were rushing to push them out of that position to set themselves up in a more advantageous position. The 1st Minnesota, consisting of 260 men, were tasked with holding out long enough against the Confederate Army to allow the rest of the Union Army to reposition themselves. So, the 1st Minnesota ordered to fix bayonets and charge the Confederate Army.
Stick those axes on the backs of your...
Yes.
On the stocks of your rifles, and...
Of those 260, 40 survived and returned. They were almost completely destroyed. In fact, the charge of the 1st Minnesota is the greatest casualty rate of any single military operation committed by a U.S. military force. However, the 5 minutes they bought with that charge allowed the rest of the Union Army to set up at Cemetery Ridge and arguably kind of turn the tide of that entire battle. And I think it kind of speaks... And the reason why I bring that up, other than my love of Civil War history, is that Bucock wasn't exactly in the same situation, but it kind of speaks to this idea of, like, what could Bucock have done if he had just, like Yangi often says, if I only had 20,000 more men, or ships, 10,000, 5,000, even 1,000 more ships. Like, how much of Bucock's loss in this battle is predicated on the fact that there simply were no ships left? That from the onset, this fight could never have been truly won, just because, like, he didn't have that, like, he didn't have that extra flank or that extra, like, division of ships. And it kind of speaks to this idea that, like, charges are often foolhardy and suicidal, but and often they do come from a bad place. They come from bad tactics and outdated thinking and false bravado. But oftentimes they also come from a place of genuine desperation. And, sometimes they are in fact the only viable tactic you have left. So,
yeah.
I hope that people would look to Bucock's final charge as not some sort of a bullheaded suicidal move, but more the final gambit of an army that otherwise had no other viable chance. And kind of with that said, rest in peace, Bucock. You will be missed. Rest in peace, Chung.
We'll always remember you shouting Andrew Fork into a coma.
Yes.
We'll always remember your sandwiches, Chung.
Yes. It's just, the FPA is the story of losing too many good men to deeply tragic and unnecessary causes. I'm really like Bucock. I'm really sad about, because I feel like Bucock was honestly one of the best characters in this show.
Yeah.
In some ways, I'm actually more regretful about Chung, because I feel like Chung never truly got to explore his narrative potential. I feel like the FPA is the story of men and women who don't get to explore their full narrative potential because they are cut short by the circumstances they live in. Of course, we'll always go back to Jessica Edwards and just imagine what she could have done for this mess. Think of Chung, what he could have done. For imagine if Bucock had ordered Chung to leave and team up with Yang. It's bizarre. It's bizarre when you actually think about the fact that Chung and Yang have actually never met face to face. It's despite the gigantic effect that Chung actually had on Yang Wen Li back in season 2. Hell, I'll still even name drop Labello as a tragedy. Like a once good man destroyed by the circumstances of his time. And hell, even the lesser known names, guys like Carlsen and stuff. Like how many good individuals, how many Mittermeyers and Reuenthals and Mecklingers and Lutzes and Wallens do there exist in the FPA that just never got their chance because the circumstances of their time just never allowed it.
Who can say? Well, perhaps we'll get a bunch of them cropping up after the FPA's collapse when we need something else to go against the Empire.
Yes. I don't mean this. We're already at our roughly around our usual end time, so I don't want to get too deep into the speculation. But I am very curious where things go from here, because not just because of the Yang stuff, but also what is the fate of the FPA? The FPA is destroyed a full 40 episodes before this show's conclusion. Where does this all end up then? Is it already inevitable that Reinhardt conquers the universe? And then if so, then is all the struggle just about asking the question of if Yang's valiant struggle is even worth it? Is there worth to struggling against an inevitable tide? If Reinhardt's fate is already sealed, if he is already fated, again, like Mashengo says, man cannot go against his fate. If Reinhardt is already fated to conquer the universe, then not necessarily what is the point, but then what is it that Legend of the Galactic Heroes, what is it the story is interested in showing us about the process? Whether that's the human cost of what does it cost Reinhardt to conquer the universe? Because we've already seen what it costs the FPA, and I think we're eventually going to see what it costs Xiang. But what does it cost Reinhardt, and what does it cost the universe? And because I guess I don't know if I'd be that satisfied if the show just literally ends with, and then Reinhardt conquered the galaxy, the end.
I think the show's a bit more nuanced to just do that.
Well, that's the thing, is that I think that Legend of the Galactic Heroes might still do that. I think it'll just do that with the nuance.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
That only this goddamn story could ever be capable of. It really speaks to this idea that a lesser anime that ended like that I'd be like, man, fuck that shit. But Legend of the Galactic Heroes,
turns out you can put in a lot more legwork when you have 110 episodes.
Indeed.
And I guess we'll find out in the future.
We will find out. We will find out in the remaining 108 episodes, not 100, 48 episodes or so we have remaining. Yeah, dog, we're on episode 72. That sounds like a big number. The fact is, like, we've been talking about, oh yeah, we're 50% through. My guy, we're still only like 60% through. Like, like there's a lot of show left. It's kind of ridiculous. And again, we still got all the Gaiden left. So
stop saying that.
What? Do you not want to watch Legend of Galactic Heroes Gaiden?
Don't announce anything before we're ready.
We have to watch Gaiden, right? Like, some of the commenters have told us that Gaiden is a lot more of like Empire bullshittery, which I both am kind of looking forward to.
Housekeeping,
but also, all right, fine. So you can listen to this podcast and all of our other podcasts and all of our other written content at theglorioblog.com. You can follow us at the Glorio Blog on Twitter. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Podbean, Google Play, and everywhere else that podcasts are bought and sold.
Watch Legend of the Galactic Heroes on High Dive and VRV.
Yes, thank you. And I think... we'll just name drop them, even though it's getting longer and longer. You can listen if you want to listen to us kind of chat about anime and anime news that's kind of happening recently. You can listen to the GLORIO Chat.
The most recent episode, as of this one, is a preview of the upcoming summer 2019 season.
Yes, which I think includes the DNT movie, which I don't think we mentioned in the podcast. So.
We didn't really. We're talking about movies.
Really. Yeah, but I'm just saying, I relish every fucking excuse we get to name drop Legend of the Galactic Heroes and other podcasts. As much it's much to the consternation of other people in that podcast, you included. If you want to listen to us talk about giant robots instead of politics, there is a Neon Genesis Evanglorio, our Neon Genesis Evangelion recap podcast, where we kind of discuss the themes of that show, kind of what I'm getting out of it as a first-time watcher, what Iro and Jill are getting out of it on a rewatch. We also discussed in a recent episode about the Netflix stuff. If you're not familiar with that, it's been a bit of a contentious thing. Maybe not as contentious as we personally think, but it is the discussion I think is worth having. If you want to argue, if you want to listen to people arguing about kaiju power levels, there is was Rise of the Monsters.
Chris and Collins are on Gloria's King of the Kaiju.
Oh, King of the Kaiju, not Rise of the Monsters. Why the fuck did I think that? But I must be thinking of something entirely different.
They watched the first episode. They watched Gamera, and the second episode they're going to watch Rodan.
Yes. They think they want to do that one monthly, so a little slower, but that just gives them more time to really come up with that hard hitting kaiju discourse. And I think that's everything. So. As always, thank you all so much for listening. Iro, as always, thank you for accompanying me on this journey.
Thank you.
I could not do this without you. And to the rest of you guys, we will see you next time amongst the Sea of Stars.